Well, that was amazing, and we certainly hope you enjoyed that video as much as we enjoyed showing it to you about the Whitley Advantage. And joining us in studio right now is Whitney Butcher, one of the attorneys with the Whitley Law Firm, along with Ben Whitley. And we're going to kind of shift our focus right now to talk about orthopedic devices that have gone bad, and specifically these hip-on-hip replacements, or hip-on-hip that where you are metal-on-metal, these hip replacements, and they can cause a lot of serious damage to people. I actually know a person that has gone through this, and she has suffered quite a bit over the years because of this. And Whitney, I know this is a focus area for you.
Right. So when we talk about these metal-on-metal hip cases, it's similar to something that Ben mentioned in one of the earlier segments, and that's the products liability case involving part of the construction workers claim. So this is a products liability claim against the companies that manufactured, sold, and marketed various metal-on-metal hip devices. So hip replacements have been around for over 100 years. It's a generally pretty well-regarded surgical procedure, pretty good results. Traditionally, it would be a metal on ceramic or metal on polyethylene or plastic articulating device. In the early 2000s, the different manufacturing companies started to come up with metal on metal articulating surfaces. So you've got a metal head and then a metal cup that it sits into. And the thought process was that it more closely mimics the natural movement of the human hip, the metal articulating against one another. So patients were promised a quicker recovery. They were promised that they would be able to be more active or as active as they were before, and not, have the same limitations that would come with a more cumbersome, but probably safer plastic or ceramic hip. So this particular device, it's called the Smith & Nephew Birmingham hip resurfacing. So a resurfacing is different from a total hip replacement because the resurfacing, you basically resurface the femoral head, and then there's a small stem that goes into the thigh bone. The patient keeps more of their bone. It's supposed to give them greater mobility and range of motion. Total hip replacement, that's where you see it going way down into the thigh bone. So a lot of these patients were women, they were men that were younger and were more active. So you could have had this resurfacing if you had osteoarthritis or hip dysplasia, something like that. So they're promised, have this device put in and you'll be back as good as new as possible. And unfortunately, that just hasn't been the case.
So what has been the real problem? That people have had to go in and have revision surgeries and to fix it, and then, man, that's a lot.
Right. So when you get a hip replacement done, the promise or the thinking of a lot of patients was, I should be set for 15 plus years. This is going to get my hip back to where I can be active and play tennis and go running and do what I want to do. The problem, though, is that with the metal-on-metal surfaces, they release cobalt and chromium in the body and then can cause pseudotumors, which is basically a benign tumor that forms outside the hip joint, and then ultimately require a revision surgery where they have to go in and with the Birmingham remove the whole thing, even the cup if it's well fixed, and then replace it with a total hip, which is an even harder surgery the second time around.
What about people watching the program right now and they're saying, 18 months ago I had a hip replacement. How do I know if I had this Smith & Nephew metal-on-metal?
So the Smith & Nephew Birmingham hip was approved by the FDA in May of 2006 and then actually recalled by the company in June of 2015. So it's not being used anymore for any women, for men over age 65, or for men who would need a smaller cup size, basically, of 46 millimeters or smaller. So if someone had a hip replacement between 2006 and 2015 and they know it's metal on metal, it's worth talking to your doctor about. They may want to do cobalt and chromium testing. That's generally kind of how you start to look and see if there's a problem. You'll have elevated cobalt and chromium levels in the blood.
That's how you would know if you might have a claim. If you talk to the doctor and they do blood tests and different kind of tests to find. Is that the procedure?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you can see primary care doctors will do the blood tests a lot, but if you have, and most people know that they have a metal-on-metal hip, and quite frankly, most people know if they have the Birmingham hip because it was so heavily sold to them as a guarantee of a greater life. And I'm a tennis player, I'm active, and I really feel for a lot of these people. The first gentleman that I met with, he was in his early 50s, tennis coach, ran 5 miles a day, and we just really connected over tennis to begin with, and he told me all the promise that was made to him once he had this Birmingham hip done, and 5 years later, he's had at least 2 surgeries and he's almost completely immobile. So it's really a
Wow.
travesty that what these people have to go through.
And so, Ben, we're talking product liability here, not doctor liability, product liability.
Yeah, so these aren't, we're not suing doctors. You know, the doctors were sold the same package, really, by these salespeople that are sent out to the doctors and say, hey, we've got this new product and here are all the advantages. These are the things you can tell your patient, on, to try to get the doctors to use their products. So the doctors weren't in the know. And these lawsuits that we're bringing for folks are not against their doctors. These are against the manufacturer. So, you know, we encourage people, if you're out there, if you think that this may be a situation, is to, of course, have checks with your doctor. But go ahead and call us. You know, we have operators standing by 24 hours a day. You can call and leave your information, and Whitney will talk to you personally.
Whitney, you talked about having, really, I think what's just a key thing that you focused on is having empathy for the people that have gone through this, because you said you're a tennis player, you're very active, and you can understand how this is so life-changing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are websites, and there were websites where the inventor of the Birmingham hip, his name is Derek McMinn, he's a surgeon over in England, where he's actually saying, I performed a BHR on a patient and she ran a marathon within a few months. I performed a BHR on a boxer and he was in the ring in the next week. I mean, they're making very bold assertions that people hang on to try to get back to life as they knew it, and it's just not, it doesn't work that way. I mean, for women, it's the BHR, when they recalled it, was a 26% failure rate. So that pretty much means that,
wow, that's 1 out of 4.
That means a quarter of every woman who has one of these, it's going to fail, and that's way too high to be acceptable.
Wow. Ben, we've got about 60 seconds to wrap things up.
Sure. Well, go to the website. There's a lot of information about our firm, about some of the products that Whitney's been working on beyond just the hip cases. You'll learn a little bit about us, and you can also put in information requests to have a free case review. So all of our consultations are free. You can give us a call or go to the website.
And then go to the website and they can send an email in, and then one of the attorneys will get back to them and respond to the email.
It's all confidential and it's free.
And there's free videos you can watch on the website as well, right?
Of course, yes.
Okay. Well, we want to thank you so much for providing us with all that information and knowledge today. It's been always a learning experience. So, Whitney and Ben, thank you so much. And thank you for watching this edition of Attorneys on Call. We'll see you next time right here.